Thanks for joining us this afternoon, Washington time, this morning, Oregon time, to discuss the introduction, or at least the public introduction of our proposal to resolve the long-term controversy over O&C lands in Oregon. I'm joined by Representative Kurt Schrader. Representative Greg Walden is involved in the intricacies of a conference on sorting out the payroll tax, Dr. Fix on Medicare and unemployment benefits, so he couldn't join us today, but he's been a full participant in this as we move through the process. What we're going to put after this press conference, put online today for comment, is a proposal that we've worked quite hard on over the last few months. It has changed as we've moved along. We've changed in response to a number of concerns raised by the Committee of Jurisdiction, the Resources Committee, and we expect it will change further, both in response to concerns we hear or see expressed from when we publicly post it. We've also, Kurt and I have formally requested that Chairman Doc Hastings hold a hearing on our proposal. Yep. Just a very, very quick outline. I've been involved in this controversy for over a quarter of a century. I started out saying we needed to protect the remaining old growth. That's never happened. The Clinton Forest Plan was substantially based in harvesting old growth. The Whopper Plan, which is now pending a court decision in Washington, D.C., was substantially based in harvesting old growth. That has been the heart of the controversy. We have resolved that controversy by saying that we are going to, for the first time, define and reserve the remaining old growth. We are also going to take the remnant then of the O&C lands and put those into a public trust. They will still be federally owned, but there will be a public trust with members appointed by the governor of Oregon, and they will be responsible for the management of these lands. They will not be exempt from any federal laws or state laws in the management of those lands, and they will have a fiduciary responsibility to produce perpetual revenue for the counties so that the counties can meet their essential service obligations to their residents. We're at a point now with the expiration, now for the third time since I've been working on this, of the Secure Rural Schools payments of a number of counties discussing quite openly the fact that they may have to dissolve and return duties to the state because they won't even be able to meet their most basic concerns. We have chronic and high unemployment in these counties, and we believe we've crafted a solution that will provide sustainability for these counties in meeting their essential legal obligations to their citizens, will provide sustainability and predictability to the timber industry, jobs in rural areas, and permanent protection and sustainability for the environment, which we all love so much in Oregon and our forests. With that, I'd be happy to let Kurt make an introductory remark, and then we'll turn to questions.
I'll just emphasize what Congressman DeFazio has been saying, and that's that we now have a unique opportunity. It probably doesn't come about, but every 20, 25 years, we've got bipartisan agreement in our great state, different stakeholders at the table that have played into this, from the timber industry, county people. We've tried to take into account the environmental concerns, the long legacy of sustainable forestry, sustainability in general in our state. And I think the bipartisan nature of this in this type of Congress, it's pretty amazing. And I think it speaks volumes for the leadership that Congressman Walden and Congressman DeFazio have shown in a very, very tough time in your United States Congress. I would like to emphasize the fact that the goal of our legislation is to take the old growth controversy off the table. Basically, if you look at our proposal in some detail, you'll see we're talking about dividing the acreage roughly in half, setting aside over 1 million acres or so for old growth to be managed by the National Forest Service, and the other half, if you will, being set aside per all federal and state environmental laws to be managed by a public trust with the goal of hopefully providing some revenue, some jobs, to the people in rural Oregon that are never going to see these big high-tech companies come down. There are software companies. That charade, I think we have to get over with. It's time to use our natural resources in a thoughtful, sustainable manner. Keep them healthy. Our forests are burning up at an exponential rate. They're carbon emitters, not carbon sinks anymore. We have to be thoughtful about how we go about things. And this is an attempt to say, hey, we're just going to have the trust deal with lands that have already been logged on or set aside for logging in the past. And so we're trying to break through that paradigm that has stymied so many before us and getting past the old timber wars. I'd like to think our timber industry is a more sophisticated, 21st century, leaner, much leaner, unfortunately, industry. And our environmental community understands that we need to have some rural jobs, especially in this economy. All boats should rise. Rural Oregon has been in a recession, almost a depression for the last 20 years. So this is an opportunity to break through. We set aside a ton of wilderness areas, hopefully in addition to this. As Peter said, we're working closely with the committee. The chairman has been very gracious, quite frankly, and giving Greg and Peter and I an opportunity to play into this because they recognize the O&C lands are unique. They are not really part of the national forest system that also needs help. But they are unique enough that we have to craft an Oregon solution that is bipartisan and represents the diverse interests we have here in our great state. So we're looking forward to your comments, quite frankly. As I said, I think we're excited about the changes that will probably have to be made to this legislation going forward. And you guys will help us craft, hopefully, a bill that we think is pretty good, make it a better bill, and we'll make our case to the chairman of the committee and look forward to being part of the manager's amendment at the very least at the end of the day. With that, I'll yield back to my colleague.
Yeah. No, I can anticipate perhaps one question, and therefore someone won't have to use their time on that. And that is, what are the implications of and/or relationship to the bill that's right now under consideration in the Resources Committee? As Kurt said, Forest Service are governed under one set of statutes, the O&C lands under a totally different set of statutes. Our total effort has been devoted to the O&C solution. That is our potential contribution to this ultimate legislation. We met with the chairman earlier this week. We decided that we still had some outstanding differences between ourselves and the committee, concerns about some of the new rules regarding state-specific legislation, transition payments, and other substantive issues in terms of management. And we're going to continue to work on those with the intention of hopefully having a public hearing, which we've asked for, and then actually integrating a modified proposal into the legislation that they expect to pass out of committee today when it goes to the floor of the House. With that, we'd be happy to take questions. Sure.
Thank you. If you would like to ask a question, please press star, then 1. Please record your name clearly when prompted. To withdraw your request, press star, then 2. Once again, to ask a question, please press star, then 1. One moment, please.
I guess they all agree.
Charles Pope with Oregonian, you may ask your question.
Yeah, hi, Congressman. I was at the markup today, and I'm wondering if you have alternatives for putting your language on some other bill, because there doesn't seem to be a way to get this through the Senate at the very least, and there seems to be some opposition in the House as well. And it seems like you guys have some issues with that bill yourselves. So how does that play into your thinking about the path forward?
Well, again, as I said, we have worked the three of us on the O&C title. We have not been involved in the development of what's being considered today in the Resources Committee. It is quite controversial. And it depends upon something that we didn't find necessary to do given the unique nature of the O&C lands. They would substantially suspend most federal laws to move forward with their title. Yet the whole objective of what they're doing, despite the controversy, is to somehow provide at least 60% of the revenues that have been historically received by these counties and school districts. So we believe that we do fit into that framework because we are the second part of that equation. We are the O&C lands of Oregon. They are unique, statutorily unique, and if we can work through our concerns about transition payments and one state legislation, things like that, we believe that we should be part of that solution, because if they just solve the issues on their terms on Forest Service lands, they're not addressing the O&C lands, and we feel this must be addressed, and that's to what we've turned our efforts. And we expect that, again, having crafted a bipartisan agreement that we believe is very reasonable and we're open to change, that at least our section of the bill should receive consideration in the Senate.
And I guess, from my standpoint, Charlie, I'd say, Senator Wyden, who's been a champion on SRS payments, is going to be introducing his bill, trying to get it over here. The president has included that in his budget. SRS, for those of you in Oregon that don't know, it applies to 42 other states. The Secure Rural Schools applies to 42 other states. So we have a national following, if you will, and I'd like to think the O&C work we're doing is a template possibly for others later on. But to Peter's point, we are unique. So if SRS, Secure Rural Schools, are to be reauthorized in the House of Representatives, it requires us to have a long-term solution for that short-term fix. It will not pass the House without this combination. So if we can get this bill out of committee, get it to the floor, off the floor with good bipartisan support, then there's a discussion about how to mix and match the Secure Rural Schools legislation from our senator's office with the long-term solution I think all three of us are trying to craft here.
Thanks.
Paul Nelville with the Register Guard newspaper.
Yeah, hi, Peter. Hi, Kurt.
Hey, Paul.
I'm curious if Hastings is not amenable to giving your bill a hearing, and you're unable to integrate the O&C legislation that you've been working on. Would you pursue this as a separate piece of legislation, and what are the practical political chances of that succeeding? Even though you might have bipartisan support in Oregon, it seems questionable whether you'd have it nationally.
Well, I believe that you're going to find that the conservation benefits here, and we've talked to a number of national environmental groups who are very interested in a major expansion of the Rogue Wilderness and protection of the Rogue River, the Devil's Staircase Wilderness, the wild and scenic provisions of the bill, the fact that we would finally statutorily protect the remaining old growth. The O&C lands would be managed with half of those managed lands on a 120-year rotation, getting further environmental benefits, require integrated pest management plans instead of broad-scale application of herbicides and pesticides, creating early seral stage forest, which according to the scientists is the most rare form of forest in western Oregon now, because it doesn't exist on industry lands and it doesn't exist on Forest Service lands because there's so little timber harvest. So we think we've got something here that both provides long-term, saving the federal government money. It would long-term provide for critical services to our counties in Oregon. It would provide for employment, and it would provide long-term conservation benefits. We're only, again, as I said at the beginning, those who don't have a solution or those who say, let's defend the status quo, those are not permanent solutions. If the Clinton Forest Plan were ever fully implemented, you will see most of the old growth harvested. If the Whopper case goes to the Supreme Court and they enact the Whopper, then you will see old growth liquidated. We believe this is something that is it's a balance, and people on both sides of the issue should agree this is a reasonable solution.
So is the answer yes? You would proceed with a standalone bill?
Well,
you're not able to meld
I can't speak for. I would. Kurt can speak for himself.
How badly does not having inclusion in the Hastings legislation hurt your chances?
Well, look, Senator Wyden chairs the Forestry Public Lands Subcommittee in the Senate. We would be happy to have him pick up this proposal, modify it as he sees fit, and take it up over there. He would have the authority as chairman of that subcommittee to bring this bill to a hearing over there. to mark the bill up over there. Potentially, the Senate is a very peculiar place. Potentially to move the bill in the Senate, I don't know. It's a bicameral institution back here, and there's two sides of the hill, and we've kept the senator's staff informed as we've moved through this process. They don't necessarily agree with everything we've done, but we'd be happy to see them take it up actively on their side.
Thanks, Peter.
Jeff Barnard with the Associated Press.
Hi, I'd like a little more complete explanation, please, of why this is not in the Hastings bill and why you seem to be going it alone at this point. Did he flat refuse to put this in there, or did you refuse to put it in there because of the controversial nature?
I think, Jeff, we've gotten about as specific as we're going to get on that. We've continued to work with the committee. We have had differences as we've gone along. We've attempted to address those. This is not the original proposal we put forward. We've made changes to address some of their concerns. We have not necessarily addressed all of their concerns, and the biggest ones relate to funding for our transition. Whether or not this constitutes an earmark, which I definitively would say it doesn't. So we have ideas on how to work through those final hurdles, and then the committee will mark the bill up. And I'm going to say that this is not a committee that is a big fan of wilderness and other things, but we'll see if they would observe and respect a bipartisan decision by the delegation that is most impacted, we've all traded a little bit here at the table. I'm getting some things I really want, not everything. Greg is getting some things he thinks are essential, not everything, and Kurt can speak for himself.
Well, yeah, I think we're in a really good spot. As you know, we've been working on this for a long time, months, as Peter said. Greg and Peter and I put a lot of time on this. Our staffs have put a lot of time on this. We've engaged the community, the governor's office, our friends in the legislature, trying to keep everyone abreast of what's going on. We've had the luxury, big quotes on luxury, of spending this amount of time. As you know, in Congress, at the end of last year, a lot of issues coming forward on a global scale that they're trying to work through. And frankly, this was not on their major radar screen. And it's only been now, we've been back a little over a month or so. We're still dealing, unfortunately, with some of the issues that we should have dealt with last year. But now we're starting to break loose from that, and the Natural Resource Committee is now able to turn its attention and get leadership's approval for bringing this type of legislation forward. So that the staff members of the Natural Resource Committee have only in the last week or two really been able to focus on this. So they've come back with concerns and questions. We, along with the committee staff, Doc Hastings staff, Greg, Peter, myself, said, well, we're okay with holding off a little bit. We don't want to present something that is misleading to the people back home and doesn't indicate what we're really all about. And this is an opportunity for us to really show everyone at home what we, as a bipartisan group from your home state, have thought we could do. We have to deal with the other 49 states in the United States of America, many of whom are represented on the Natural Resource Committee. So we want to make sure you understand what we're presenting and can help us to negotiate, frankly, with the chairman and his staff before this bill comes to the floor and get the best deal for Oregon. Make sure it works for us.
Once again, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star, then one. Amelia Templeton with Oregon Public Broadcasting.
Hi, I'm wondering if you can clarify what section of the bill the committee chair has asked you to change or is looking for changes in.
Well, I mentioned, a major question and concern they have is, for the first 2 years, while the public trust is set up, while the governor appoints the Board of Trustees in Oregon, when they begin to meet and develop a management plan under the guidance in this bill, there'll be a couple of years where there is no income on these lands. And so we need transition payments of one sort or another. That's a big question mark with the majority, with the Republicans here, on those sorts of payments and whether or not that would constitute an earmark, even though we have asked to make it as a interest-bearing loan from the federal treasury, which we would repay. They still think that's a problem. So we're trying to work that through. That's critical. We've also approached the state whether there would be a state option to fund these activities in the interim. They're still grasping to understand the absolutely unique nature of the O&C lands and that they are a one-state issue. There's no way around that. If you're going to resolve an issue on federal lands that only exist in one state, it has to be specific to that state. So we're working on informing them better on that. There will be other substantive concerns. We have we'll address those as they come along in terms of some of the issues I talked about, the protections that are in the bill. But I am adamant that those are my bottom line here. I really feel that we need to end, as Kurt said, once and for all, forever, the controversy over old growth. That's what's tied us up in the courts in endless appeals. That's why the Clinton Forest Plan failed to produce even a fraction of the reduced volume of timber it was predicted to produce because it depended upon harvesting old growth. We've got to get the old growth off the table. We've got to protect it. It's unique, it's irreplaceable, and once we do that, I believe we can resolve a reasonable way to manage the rest of the lands, and I'm adamant that has to be done in this legislation.
Has the committee asked you to take the specific sections related to old growth out of the bill or to change them?
No, we've had a sort of a rolling series of discussion. Right now, I'd say the two major issues are the state specificity and the funding. But if you're watching the proceedings of the committee today, or if you watched any other proceedings of that committee in the last 6 months, you get an idea that they have different point of view about what should and shouldn't be done on the federal lands than I do.
Yeah, I think a point is that given the nature of the majority in that committee, some of this is a tough hill to climb. Wilderness areas are a tough hill for some of those members. Greg and Peter and I have all come together on this, along with many others in our community. They're willing to, share in kind of melding their interests and their concerns together. That's a hallmark of what Oregon does. We can pick tons of areas where our state's a leader, and this is another area. Quite frankly, one of the other things that's intriguing to me as a relatively new member is how they're very interested in this concept. They've got national problems in federal forest lands and stuff. We've tried to emphasize to them, the O&C is kind of unique, and frankly, Oregon with Oregon Forest Practices Act, and we're a unique situation here in the Pacific Northwest with our sister state. But there's other states that aren't far along, either in thinking about it like we are, or in how they regulate issues on their private lands, private timberland. So they're very interested in it, actually, and so they've shown more interest than maybe we expected, and we're trying to make sure that we don't confuse them with what we're trying to do, and make sure that as we roll this out, we get a chance to show what Oregon can do first. And frankly, if our state can actually come to a bipartisan resolution on this with broad support across the state, up and down the I-5 corridor, I think that may be an opportunity for other states to say, well, geez, let's look at it through our own prism, figure out how we want to do things. Maybe we can do what Oregon did.
Governor Kitzhaber has taken the lead on this issue in the state, and he said, we can't look at any of our lands in isolation. We have state forests, we have private lands, we have BLM lands, and we have national forests. He said we can't look at them in isolation to get all the values we want out of them, to protect what we want to protect, but also get the economic value where appropriate. And I think, again, the governor has, shown leadership here, and we have met with the governor to discuss this proposal. He doesn't necessarily accept everything that we've proposed, but he's very interested in moving forward with this concept.
This is Amelia again with OPB. I'm just wondering if I can ask a quick follow-up. The one thing that's confusing me, I understand the point that you're making about the uniqueness of the O&C lands and the fact that they only exist in Oregon. Why are the O&C lands included in the chairman's bill currently? That's my read of the bill, that it specifically mentions them in addition to the National Forest System.
None of us have been involved in the drafting of that title of the bill or that side of the bill. We've been focused on what is unique to Oregon, and we would say what we're proposing should substitute for their mention of O&C lands in the bill.
And as a new guy, I'd assume that Greg Walden's been a long-term member of the Natural Resource Committee. The committee's very well aware of O&C through his and Peter's work over the years, and realize that while it's not part of the National Forest System, we do manage a lot of timberlands there, and actually should be managing them much better. So I think hopefully our colleague from Eastern Oregon's made his point, and thank goodness the rest of the committee's listening to he and Peter.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Paul Fadig with Mail Tribune.
Could speak more to the approach of asking comments from the public. Are you just testing the waters, or is there an issue that you hope to resolve by that approach?
No. Well, Paul, we've received a tremendous amount of editorial support across the state. Some of the Oregon-based environmental groups countered with a proposal which quite everybody says is nothing. It doesn't do anything about the problem. It says counties should raise their property taxes no matter what their unemployment rate is, and even there they're not accurate in how much they would have to be raised. Most counties couldn't even raise their taxes that much, even if they could get their voters to go along. Say that Oregon should quadruple its severance tax and divert the money from an already starved state budget to the counties. I haven't seen anyone introduce that in Salem. And then the $110 million of savings, I went down that path because I thought maybe there was a lot of savings there, and the Forest Service said, no savings. So, we're putting something out that's real. It is not without controversy. It would resolve the issues. And we want to hear meaningful comments from people on it. The one criticism I have seen that sticks is we haven't shared this. We didn't share it because it wasn't a finished product. It's not even now a finished product, but it is a good discussion draft, and we want to have that discussion.
I echo what Peter said. I mean, it's not all about us, for goodness sakes. It's about people of the state of Oregon, and we think we represent this state pretty well amongst the three of us. We look forward to working with everybody. We don't pretend to have this is our way or the highway. We're trying to get real comments. It'll help inform us on this side of the debate on the House, and I think it'll inform our senators on the other side as this bill moves forward.
Thank you.
Jeff Bernard with the Associated Press.
Do you have any specific projections on timber volume or revenue produced by this bill?
No, we don't. And we've put forward a management regime. We've created a fiduciary trust, which is to manage sustainably under the restrictions of law. And we are hopeful to replace as much or more of counties' revenue as they're receiving this year, and do it predictably and sustainably over time. We also know this would provide more predictability. We have not estimated any harvest levels, and we don't mandate any, but it would certainly be more predictable than the current state of affairs, which is lurching from virtually no harvest because of all the litigation and appeals of the Clinton Forest Plan, to potentially massive harvest should the Supreme Court uphold the Whopper, for instance. So we're trying to provide predictability, stability into the future, and after we've ground through the details of this thing, we can send this off to some forest economists and people who know a lot more about those things than we do, and get some numbers. Right now we can't attach numbers. We know there will be, I would predict, thousands of jobs. We know we could save thousands of jobs if the counties had predictable funding into the future. So that's a good starting point.
I'm sure our friends in the counties and timber industry have done their own calculations, but we've been specific. We specifically do not specify a million board feet harvest level. We do not specify an annual revenue level, because you recognize that you can't do that with a natural resource. It goes up, it goes down, the markets change. But to Peter's point, we are trying to put some certainty and predictability in here, limit the lawsuits, have a pattern for how things would happen. We set a reserve fund in this, as you'll notice, so that when times aren't good, we don't have to go and over-harvest to meet revenue targets. Counties will be able to tap that reserve fund to make sure they still have a budget and keep their sheriffs on the streets and make sure their communities are safe.
Once again, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star, then 1, and record your name. Lee Gillerant with Herald News, Plymouth Falls.
Hi. I was trying to find out where people can see a copy of the discussion draft. I haven't seen that myself, and I'm sure we'll want to run something in the paper just where people can get the details of just what the plan calls for.
Well, I'm going to post it on my website with a link both from a section-by-section description of the bill, with a with the full text of the bill, and a comment form and link there, and our staff can provide you the web address, and I defer. I don't know how Kurt's going to handle that.
That'll be on our, I think, all three of our websites at the end of the day here. In some extensive detail, and we're open for more inquiries, like I said, and more comments and more questions that'll help us craft a better bill at the end of the day, and again, help us, help our senators do what we need to do, but refer to our websites.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Paul Nelville with the Register Guard newspaper.
Didn't we talk to you already?
Yeah, but I'm going to yield to Jack, who's sitting here listening with me.
Okay. I'm just kidding,
Jack
Paul.
Wilson at the Register Guard in Eugene. If Chairman Hastings incorporates your O&C proposal with his larger Forest Service bill, would you support the combined product?
Jack, I'm not going down that path right now. I'm not much on speculation. We went and worked very hard to not waive laws in writing our proposal. And I believe there is a way on the federal forests to make them more productive into the future without waiving our environmental laws. I went down that path once very early on, working with Senator Hatfield, Senator Packwood, Les O'Coin, Denny Smith, Ron Wyden, and at least Ron and I both said at the beginning of this controversy, he said, we're never doing that again. I just fought very bitterly and succeeded on the Transportation Committee in stripping a provision that would have waived all environmental laws, in fact, all laws for major transportation projects dictated by the president. I believe we need to have respect for the law. So I have tremendous concerns about those provisions of that bill. But there are amendments pending to change that bill in committee. I expect there would be amendments pending on the floor. And there's sometimes I don't know how I'm going to vote on a bill until we've gone through the whole process, including a parliamentary thing at the end called a motion to recommit, and then I know.
Hey, Peter, you can't get rid of me. It's Paul again. It seems to me that if you had to name somebody that had a lot of juice in the House of Representatives, it's Greg Walden. And the fact that he was ostensibly on board with this, and yet it was not, has not been embraced by Hastings' bill. Is that an ominous note? Is that what should be a cynic might read something into that?
No, I mean, first you used the word ostensibly. I mean, he signed the joint press release which we sent out announcing the fact that we were going to make this bill publicly available for comment and in the agreed upon form. So it's more than ostensible. I mean, as much as there is controversy and risk for me or Kurt in some provisions of the bill, there is controversy and risk for Greg coming from a very different direction over some of the provisions in this bill. So he has been fully associated with us, been a full partner in the discussions. There are some issues that ultimately, particularly these things that relate to transition, supposed earmarks and those sorts of things that ultimately may have to get decided at the leadership level on their side. And I would expect that would be the point at which Greg would weigh in. But he's also been respectful of the fact that Doc Hastings chairs this committee, and Greg is not about to, nor does he have the authority to order Doc to do anything. But we've been involved in a very productive and ongoing discussion.
Thanks.
Charles Kocher with Curry Coast Pilot.
Congressman, what are you hearing from the Association of Oregon Counties here, or O&C Counties, pardon me?
Our response has been very favorable from the counties, And we hope for their full support. We'd also be willing to obviously entertain any concerns they have, as well as members of the general public or other interest groups. But they're favorably disposed. They realize that that this is part of a two-part solution. Because of the rules of the Senate are different, Ron has taken the lead on continuing payments. And we would need some sort of bridge payments for a couple of years in addition to the money we would need to develop management plans. And that's absolutely critical. And we've taken the lead on this side. And both of us, both Senator Wyden, Senator Merkley, Kurt, Greg, and I have worked very closely with AOC, O&C, and a host of other elected officials, sheriffs, and others who are very concerned about falling off a cliff.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note, I think, back home, as you are all aware, the governor set up a local task force and committee to look at this whole issue through the state prism. And we've been trying to reach out to, as Peter said, the governor's office, other members of the legislature, to let them know what we're doing and try and marry things up a little bit here. So hopefully we'll be in a good spot at the end of the day. I think Greg's in a really, really good spot to do some great things. He's been pushing hard, but again, we actually, despite the craziness you all see on TV, we do try and respect each other's area of responsibility and let the process work its way through. And I think we're all just trying to be respectful. It's a difficult process here. We come from the Pacific Northwest. It's a heck of a lot different than down in South Carolina or even up in Maine. We have a whole different process and mindset, and it takes a while for committee members and members of Congress to understand and get comfortable with what we're doing here in Oregon.
At this time, I show no further questions. This concludes today's conference call. Thank you for attending. You may disconnect at this time.
Thank you very much.